for those of you who were able to join us last year at the annual banquet, Tom was our keynote speaker and was able to highlight some of the activities that they were conducting with the jacl project and some of the oral history interviews. And so we've asked him to return just to give us a little bit more of an update on some of the things that he's been able to accomplish this past year. And certainly working with a lot of our local membership base too. So we'd like to introduce Tommy Kata.
My name is Steve Alzoni. I'm co-chair of the Oral History, Twin Cities Oral History Committee. Densho is a Japanese word meaning to pass on to the next generation. If you were at last year's banquet, you saw a presentation by Tom, the executive director of the Densho project. Their mission is to preserve the testimonies of Japanese Americans who were unjustly incarcerated during World War II before their memories are extinguished. Densho has conducted hundreds of interviews. They can be viewed at the densho.org website. And Minnesota is of particular interest to Densho due to the Military Intelligence Service language school. I had to look that up a few times to get that. Located at Camp Savage and later Fort Snelling during World War II. Between the language schools in California and Minnesota, over 6,000 Nisei, Kibei, and Caucasians were recruited to translate documents and interrogate prisoners for the U.S. Army. They were deployed to Japan, the Philippines, and other areas of the Pacific. Through grants, garage sales, and generous contributions from the JA community, the Minnesota Oral History Committee worked with Densho to interview 10 Nisei from the Twin Cities area, and we did that in June of this year. This project inspired us to raise money to interview 8 more Nisei, and 1 Sansei, which we did in October. And they were produced independently of Densho, but will be posted on the Densho website. So I'd like to recognize the committee members who worked so hard on this project. And it took over a year for this project to be completed. Cheryl Dulis is the co-chair, Sally Sudo, Lucy Kirihara, Carolyn Naimatsu, who's not here tonight, Penny Snipper, who's not here, and Janet Carlson. Would you stand, please? And so Tom is here tonight to show excerpts from the interviews, which took place in June, as I said. So ladies and gentlemen, Tom Kata.
It's actually really appropriate that I talk, after Bruce's talk, because so much of what Densho does is it collects the personal stories, and I got sort of shivers down my back when I thought about Bruce's story and what he went through, because that's kind of what we do at Densho. We collect these stories, and right now I'm focusing more on the Niseis, but then I think ultimately we'll be collecting stories like Bruce's, so that others can also see this. When I think about, I have to tell you a story of how I'm here. I mean, it was actually about 2 or 3 years ago that I happened to be in Minneapolis because my son was actually it must have been about 4 years ago that my son was at an ultimate frisbee tournament up in Wayne. And it was a big tournament, it was a national tournament, so we came here. But then someone here caught wind that I was coming and heard about the Densho project. So they asked me to meet with them. And so one morning I met, and then they started talking about, well, maybe we could do some stories in Minneapolis. And so then last year I was invited to speak at this banquet. And what I did was I showed some clips that we had collected from other communities. And what happened was, and I did, I actually worked with lots of different JCL chapters, historic groups in other parts of the country, and this group was actually pretty unique in that everything they said they were going to do, they did, plus more, which is unusual. Oftentimes I'll go to the community and say, well, we want to do some stories and we want to collect them, but then nothing happens. And Steve was saying, well, it took a whole year. Usually it takes communities like 4 or 5 years to really get their act together, to actually put together an oral history project. And then they'll barely do it. We did 9 or 10 over the summer, and then since then the committee has done another 8 or 9. So it's a really extraordinary effort. And I just want to share with the rest of you in the room that the people you have working on this oral history project are pretty extraordinary. This is, and again, based on experiences working with lots of other communities, what you have in Minneapolis or the Twin Cities is really, really extraordinary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, so over the summer, just a few months ago, we were in Twin Cities, and we did 9 interviews. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show some short clips of the interviews. But more than just show those short clips, I also want to show you how currently thousands of people are now looking at these clips throughout the world on our website. For those of you who were here last year, I talked a little bit about the Project Dencho and what we did. And I'm not going to do so much of it today, but I'll just mention that we are Seattle-based. We started about 13 years ago to primarily collect the stories of Japanese Americans. But then once we started doing this, teachers started coming up to us saying, these stories are not just a Japanese American experience. When you listen to Bruce and his talk about what the Marines did to him, it's really an American story that has really that the Japanese Americans are part of that really needs to be told. So what we do is we educate students about injustice. So over 10,000 students a month come to our website to learn about Japanese Americans. So I'm going to start with the first clip is of Helen Chia. And generally the interviews went for about 2 to 3 hours long. And after the interview, what we do is we transcribe and prepare these DVDs and put on our website. And what I did was, so here's a short clip where Helen talks about December 7th, 1941, which was, as you can imagine, a very traumatic time for Japanese Americans. And so she talks about what that day was like for her and the confusion that she had. Let me make sure I have, realizing the sound up. Let me plug into the sound system here. Let's try this. So here's a short clip from Helen.
When I was watching a movie at the church that night, and then we were watching the wars, pictures and stuff, and then these people came out, and they said, you just heard it, so then we left it and went home right away. It happened, I think it was Sunday morning in it. And so then I thought to myself, at that time, I thought, what am I going to do? I really felt, I don't know if I'm really proud of my heritage. And I really feel that I was, I didn't know anything about Japan at that time. I never visited or anything. I'm an American citizen. I considered myself, in the United States. But I had an experience, I guess, I felt sorry for my parents. And they never said anything about going back or anything like that, It was just, I don't know, it was a very sad time for me. Because I was wondering how other people would feel. And I shouldn't have said that because I really should have thought to myself, I am an American citizen,